Just a few days ago, I had the chance to spend some time with the new Sony FX2, which Sony calls your gateway to cinematography. And in this video, I'll share with you my thoughts on the camera's new features and also who may benefit from them the most. The FX2 borrows some of the latest AI and autofocus features from top-tier alpha cameras such as the A7R Mark V and the Alpha 1 II, and also brings some very handy features from the Burano and other cinema cameras such as the Big 6 menu, DCI 4K and shutter angle. In essence, the FX2 adopts the form factor of the beloved FX3 camera and also makes some refinements/changes to the design. Because when something works, and clearly the FX3 form factor does work very well, why change it? But we'll go over the main differences between the FX2 and the FX3 a bit later on in the video. But first, let's talk about the sensor. The FX2 features a full-frame 33 megapixel sensor borrowed from the A7 IV. And with more pixels comes more resolution, which if you're shooting stills aimed for print or anything not seen on a tablet or a mobile phone is actually a big plus. The larger megapixel count also makes it possible for the camera to incorporate a new dynamic active mode stabilization, which crops further into the sensor to give you some extra stability in certain situations. The FX2 captures excellent 4K 30 frames per second in full frame, which is downsampled from the 7K sensor, giving you a nice, sharp image full of detail. The FX2 can also record in 4K 60p, but with a 1.5 times crop. This is one of the downsides of having a larger megapixel count sensor, as these usually come with a slower readout speed. However, for some creators filming wildlife or sports, the crop may actually be a benefit. A 120 frames per second is also an option, however this is only possible in 1080p. In my opinion, this is still very useful. I did a few shots in 120 frames per second recently. I found the footage to be easy to work with and detailed enough, even though it's not in 4K. It didn't fall apart when pushed a bit in post and held detail to a reasonable degree. Sure, this is by no means a dedicated slow motion cinema camera, and don't expect an equivalent super slow motion performance compared to that of something that can do full frame 4K 120 frames per second. However, for content creation and occasional B-roll, this just works fine. The slower readout speed and the larger megapixel count do introduce a bit more rolling shutter compared to the FX3, which in fairness has 3 times less pixels to worry about, but in my recent experience filming a tennis match with the FX2, I really didn't find the 4K 60p crop or the rolling shutter to be an issue. In practical, real-world usage, in my opinion, this is not something to be concerned about. However, if you are a user that absolutely demands 4K 60p full frame or a faster readout speed because, for example, of the type of work you do, totally understandable. In this case, the FX3 or the FX6 will be better options. However, for the average user, the 4K 60p feature, despite the crop, is still a nice workable option to have. Moving on to the new AI chip for this camera, it brings some really cool autofocus features. These features include auto framing, which lets the camera follow you around while keeping you in the desired frame. You can choose from a medium crop or a small crop. And I can see this feature becoming quite useful for solo creators or for presentations. When it comes to autofocus, the FX2 also features new subject detection options ported over from the top-tier Alpha 1 II. These include subject detection for humans, birds, cars, trains, animals, insects. These can all be manually selected or deselected, and you can also let the camera switch between them automatically. For aspiring photographers, I think this will be a killer feature. In my opinion, the main event feature for the FX2 is actually the EVF. It's a physical EVF that's actually very good quality. It has a 0.7 times magnification, a 3.6 million dots resolution, a function button, and a 90-degree tilt range. I filmed a tennis match at midday on a sunny afternoon, which would have been impossible without the EVF. It looks like it's well built, and the eye cup provides a comfortable fit, while the diopter adjustment is actually quite nice, especially for someone like me who wears glasses. Other new features in the FX2 include streaming via USB in 4K 30p, focus breathing compensation is now also available, log mode in stills, you can also use that, and one new feature that I found quite useful is the 4K screen grab while shooting video. This can be assigned to the shutter button, and is a feature that you can access via the menu in the Auto Create Still Image selection. Now let's go over the differences in terms of physical design between the FX2 and the FX3 to see what sort of improvements Sony has made. For the most part, the two cameras look identical apart from a few minor changes. Now, the obvious, of course, is the addition of the electronic viewfinder. The top buttons are for the most part the same. You still have the big record button and 3 custom buttons. The changes here are you now have 2 mounting points for accessories or a cage. On the port side of things, we have some slight rearrangements. The 3.5mm microphone and headphone ports are now exposed. This side also features an exhaust vent for the internal cooling system, much like on the FX3, and the flip-out LCD has a very similar, if not identical, movement mechanism, but it has a slightly smaller physical size because of the EVF which now sits on top. The other side of the camera remains physically the same if you don't count the painted thread on the Q20. And when it comes to the media slots, there's a little bit of a difference now. Slot 1 is for CF Express Type A and SD cards, while slot 2 takes only SD cards. The FX3, on the other hand, can take CF Express cards in both slots. Looking at the back of the camera, we can see the new movie/still switch, letting you switch between photo mode and movie mode quite easily. The home button also makes an appearance, which when pressed gives you access to the Big 6 menu, which is ported from the Burano and the Venice 2, giving you quick access to key settings such as frame rate, white balance, look, shutter angle, ISO or EI. Sony have also added a second mounting point to the bottom of the camera, which will make your cage/tripod plate a lot more stable, and that's always good to have. The battery here is also the same as on the FX3 and the A7S Mark III. It's the good old familiar NP-FZ100. So at the end of the day, after using it for an afternoon and a half, what do I make of the FX2? Just like with any camera, there's compromises. However, this being an entry-level model is actually a very decent one at that. As an all-round package, which in my opinion all cameras should be considered, the FX2 delivers on its intended purpose. It's a decent all-rounder with some of the latest autofocus and still functionality. It has an excellent EVF and a really good 4K video for those looking to dip their toes into the Sony cinema line. The camera is also compatible with a wide range of Sony accessories, such as the GP VPT3 grip and the VP2 wireless remote, which now lets you adjust focus, and it's quite practical for self-shooters or vloggers if you're into this sort of thing. It will also make a fantastic B or C camera for an FX6, FX9, FX3 or even a Burano. I mean, for interviews, this is going to be a great additional camera to give you that extra frame for a Netflix documentary or something. If you have any questions about the FX2 or you just want to share your opinion about the camera, I'm sure a lot of you will have opinions on this camera, and that's fine, that's great. I do invite you in the comment section. I'll see you there.